Hello, my name is Jamie Edwards, and I am one of two deputies from the Diocese of North Carolina serving on Legislative Committee number 6, Sexual Harassment, Sexual Exploitation and Safeguarding. I was on this committee at the last General Convention of General Convention 79 in 2018 in Austin, Texas. And that was also the time of the Me Too movement. And there was a great deal of legislation that came through this committee. And that work has been continuing and will continue.
I am DeLois Ward, and this is the first time that I've been one of the 8 representing the Diocese of North Carolina at the General Convention and assigned to the Legislative Committee number 6. The committee has been very busy. We had 6 Zoom meetings for a total of 12 hours. Seems like we worked a lot. So the committee is made up of 18 persons. There are 6 clergy, 3 bishops, and the rest are lay. At each meeting, we reviewed the resolutions. There were 7 referred to us and discussed them literally forever, it seems like. There was endless discussions, made some suggestions, did a little bit of editing, and eventually passed them on to be presented. The first resolution was A061. It originally called for a change to the annual parochial report filed by every congregation in the Episcopal Church to include demographic information on gender, age, race of those in local leadership. The resolution was proposed by the task force to study sexism in the Episcopal Church, develop anti-sexism training, which found lack of information and impediments to researching sexism. The committee wanted additional information to be gathered, including gender identity and expressions, ethnic, sexual orientation, and disability status. Because as a committee, members reflected on the fact that many of these categories aren't necessarily known to those who complete the parochial report, they voted to amend the resolution to require Executive Council to come up with a mechanism for gathering this data. The committee then voted to recommend this be adopted, also placing it on the House of Deputies consent calendar.
Next, A062 requires additional data from dioceses to help create a plan to narrow the gender equity gaps in pay for both lay and clergy leadership representation.
That was followed by A064, which called for adopting revised safe church training modules and promoting them across the church.
A065 is the resolution that deals with translating the new Safe Church materials in addition to French, Spanish, and Haitian Creole to also include sign language, but there are sign languages in different languages. And this effort needs to be done as a true culturally relevant an appropriate translation and not simply a transliteration. So it's a pretty complicated process. And as such, the resolution calls on Executive Council to create a new task force to have oversight over these translations. And so the committee recommended the resolution be adopted with committee amendments, but members felt it would need to be discussed by the House of Deputies and House of Bishops. So it will not be placed on the consent calendar.
A067 authorizes parishes to use and adapt a model on anti-harassment along with best practices guide, and it was referred to our committee.
Two resolutions referred to our committee that were new to us at the meeting that we most recently held earlier in the month. The first one is C063, which encourages Episcopalians to wear black on Thursdays as part of the World Council of Churches campaign for a world without rape and violence. Gender-based violence is a huge issue. I know that I have heard much about it when I've traveled to Botswana, and it is, and so in solidarity with our brothers and sisters and siblings around the world, we are being asked to participate in this Thursdays in Black movement. And there was a little comical aside that for those of us who are already wearing black on Thursdays, for clergy purists who only wear the black clergy shirt, there is a pin that we can get as well to show our solidarity with this. And this was put on the deputies' consent calendar.
And the second resolution referred to us was C064, Break the Silence Sunday, on the Sunday closest to November 25th, which is the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. Speaking in support of the resolution was the Reverend Loma Loma of Fiji in the Diocese of Polynesia and part of the Anglican Church of Aotearoa, New Zealand and Polynesia. Loma Loma is an advocate for gender equity and a member of the Anglican Communion Safe Church Commission. She noted that Fiji has marked this observance since 2013 and urged adoption as a way for the church to stand publicly with those who have been victimized by gender-based violence. She said, for too long, the church has been accused of being a gatekeeper, of condoning violence because of their silence. But a public witness tells survivors that they are believers, they are loved, they have value, that the church is creating a space where they can feel safe about sharing their story, and that the church is honoring their courage and their resiliency. We voted to place it on the House of Deputies consent calendar.
Our committee, as well as 3 subcommittees that were formed to divide up this work, have been hard at it. DeLois already apparently has been tallying the hours of these meetings, and I prefer not to count them. But she wasn't even counting all the subcommittee meetings, and we've been hard at it since January. And as you are probably aware, that is new. Historically, legislative committees meet and do all the work on site during General Convention. So as part of doing things differently this time, we have actually been hard at work for the last 6 months on these resolutions. So in the midst of continuing concerns about abuse, about boundary violations and other ways in which people have been harmed, please know that we in the Episcopal Church are working hard to amend, correct, and discern the way forward in the most healthy, loving, and life-giving ways for all of God's children. And I, on behalf of DeLois and myself, it's been a privilege to serve on this hardworking committee.
And I might just add, I think Jamie and I were the only two on the committee from the same diocese. So that was a good feeling to have a kindred spirit there for this work.
Yes, yes. So it is our honor and privilege to represent the Diocese of North Carolina when we travel to Baltimore very
Yes.
soon now.
Thank you for tuning in.